Well, ladies and gentlemen, as promised, I have a fantastic guest slotted with us today, a veteran two times over, serving both in the Marine Corps and my beloved Army. We have with us Richard Mortimer. He's also the Director of Corporate Development for Project RELO, and we're going to get into all that also in just a few minutes. So, Richard, because it is the Lima Charlie show, we always start with a fun little radio check. How do you read me over?
I read you loud and clear, over.
Fantastic. Yeah, I got you 5 by 5 like the good old days. Yeah. So yeah, we'll get into this project. You were actually connected to us, you and Doug and some of the other team members you work with. I get connected to you through who we belovedly call our angry Colonel, Rob
Yeah.
Robinson.
Yes, absolutely.
So
Yeah.
we're gonna get into that and this
Okay.
awesome mission you guys are on. But first, for our listeners' sake, I always like to get the background story of our veteran guests. So if you could walk us through the decisions behind your first branch of service in MOS, and I know it evolves from there, but walk us through the decision that led up to the first enlistment.
Oh, absolutely. So I was in high school, and you know, it didn't really have a path. It didn't have a direction. I tried I got good grades. I was an athlete, this and that, but I had no idea of what I specifically wanted to do. Like I didn't fit. Growing up, it's like, we saw our parents go into their parents' profession or in a certain direction, and my dad served in the Navy for a while and, moved all over the place. And, I went to college and for a semester in mechanical engineering, and I did horribly that semester. So it was like, I was like, okay, this is not for right now. And so I got talking to my dad, my grandfather. They were both, every male in my family has been a veteran for as far back as we can go. We've gone all the way back to 12, 1300s, all the way back to England.
Oh,
So they've
wow.
served in just about every war since. And so, my grandfather had been in the Marine Corps. My dad was in the Navy. And, talking to my grandfather, I was like, okay, I'm going to the Marine Corps. And so I did that. And then after I was a 6173, a CH-53 crew chief in the Marine Corps. And I was also a flight equipment technician. And so after about 4 years of that, from January 97 to January 2001, I was in station in Hawaii at Kaneohe Bay for a while with HMH 363.
Hmm.
And after that, we had done different things, but we hadn't really like deployed anywhere or whatever. And I was like, hey, it's time to go back to school and do that, go that route. So I got out for 4 years, and about October of 2004, I decided to go. A friend of mine was in the Virginia Army National Guard, so I went in the Virginia Army National Guard, and then we in 2006 my National Guard unit deployed to Kosovo, and after Kosovo, decided to stay on active duty Army, and so that and I was medically retired in January 2015, as a infantryman from the Army, and I've gone from there.
Yeah, so that's interesting. So let me just frame this for the audience sake. So it's interesting. So you got out of the full-time Marine Corps because you weren't
Yep,
feeling there wasn't enough going on in the world. And
correct.
that was,
Yeah,
did I hear you correctly? That was in early 2001, so January.
January
So
2001.
pre
Yes.
9/11, there's
Yep.
nothing much going on in the world.
Right,
And then
exactly.
you watched that unfortunate attack unfold and all the wars that started, and then you felt service, duty to serve. You go back
Yep.
this time choosing, what Marines might call the lighter side of things, the Army.
Correct. Absolutely. Absolutely. There and it it is truly a lighter side. Honestly, there's so when I was in the Marine Corps, I feel that there was a heavier heavier weight on the shoulders, more responsibility as a E2, E3
Oh, the leadership roles are ingrained
than
very, very, very low
they
immediately.
are very low
Yep.
ranking,
Yep.
and like I had more like it was, and then transfer the Army, I was like, oh, it did feel like an easy life, but it was also not so easy on the other, in other
Right.
times as well.
Right. And then another detail I want to point out for the listener's sake is you mentioned your tour was in Kosovo. A lot of folks they think about the last 20 years and they can only think about Iraq,
Correct.
Afghanistan. They forget that there's all these other conflicts. We've had guests on that were in the Ukraine and
Hmm.
supported the Crimea mission, Kosovo. So that's very interesting. Um, how now that was so the Kosovo tour was that forgive me, I missed the detail. Was that part of your National Guard deployment or was that full time or was that
That was part of my National Guard deployment.
okay.
So at the time, National Guard I believe they still are responsible for the Kosovo mission right now. And we were there. We had just, right when we had just gotten there, Kosovo was just starting to do the vote to be independent of Serbia and vote for their own president and whatnot. So it was a key critical time in their history. And we were there for about 13 months. And then yeah, and then when I came back, I decided to go active army. I ended up getting stationed out at Fort Carson. And then I got back in December 2007, and by September of 2008, I was headed to Iraq with an active duty unit.
Yes, you did Kosovo and then Iraq, but that was with
Yep.
full time. That's interesting. Yeah, I did some time in Iraq myself, but that was '04 and that was with the National Guard.
Mhm.
Got attached, of course, but yeah. So you had this is really interesting. So you had two branches of service.
Yep.
Technically, you could say three. National Guard is a
You could
bureau,
say three.
so
Yeah,
so you could say three. Two different deployments, two different theaters of operations, and two different MOSs.
absolutely.
So what I find fascinating about veterans such as yourself, because I'm like a 111, right? I
Mhm.
was in one
Right.
branch, I did one tour, albeit I spent 8 years, but then I got out of there. I'm fascinated by this because when I left the service, and like many of us, we miss the camaraderie, we miss the
Absolutely.
fellow service members. But when you leave, there's a reason you left, and
Mhm.
and none of it's pleasant. But the reality is, you leave and you think, geez, I don't know if I could ever go back. And here you did go back.
Well, it was a, as we know, like, so when I got out of the Marine Corps, it was tough. I spent almost a good 6 months to a year looking for a job.
Mm.
Yeah, I was going to school. Did school full time, and it got to the point where I was like, there was that that camaraderie was missing. There was something felt that was missing. And honestly, I was like, you have a path, like when you're in the military, you feel like, okay, I'm on track somewhere.
Right.
And when I got out, even though I was going to school and, I was progressing, I felt like I was teetering on those, falling off the track, off the path, and it was reflecting back on my family. I had my first kid right around in 2002. And it wasn't just a clean path forward. It was rough. And so going to the Guard, a good friend of mine from the Marine Corps had gone to the Virginia Guard. So we were like, hey, he's like, hey, this is what we're doing. I think it would, we kind of used it as a, almost as a let's get back on track kind of tool. And it helped, and it got me back on a path that more of a direct path. And then when we deployed, I was like, okay, this is actually like keeping me on a path. Something got, and it's better for my family. This was right around 2008 when the housing bubble, the
Sure. Yeah, the
financial
recession. Yeah,
problems,
yeah.
stuff like that. And so I was like, okay, I'll be on, active duty was a good place to be in that time. And then when I went back to active duty, it was like, okay, this is, you know, by the time I hit the milestones, I got promoted to sergeant probably within 2 years back on active duty. I was E6 a year after, and staff sergeant year or two after that. And I was pretty well fast tracking. And it just, by that time, I had already was at like my 10-year mark. And I was like, I might as well just stick it out and stay. And then, so that's how I progressed.
Yeah, that's fascinating. It's a lot of decisions, a lot of pivoting, and
Absolutely.
you got through it. So what year did you were medically retired? So when did that happen, and how was that because you walked us through from the Marine Corps and
Mhm.
back into the service, but how was your final separation? I like to say on the show a lot that, we all know that there's a good field manual of how to become a
Right.
Marine or a soldier, right? There's DIs and
Absolutely.
they have a process for that. But there's no process of becoming a veteran. It's a lifelong process, frankly.
Yeah.
So walk me through that final one because
Hmm.
you have an interesting detail that's different from myself and a lot of the guests. You went through a transition out once already. So what steps did you take that may have been a little bit different
Hmm.
the final time? And how did that go? Did it make it easier or worse that you already had that prior experience of separating?
So, the first time I was really young, and then when I got out the first time, I was like, okay, this is what I'm gonna do. Okay, I didn't really need a plan then because I was really young, but this time, I have a kid, I have family, I need to figure it out. And when I got hurt and um, and they were saying I was gonna be medically retired, I was like, I fought it as much as I could because I was just right there at the cusp of the full, of 20 years and then retiring, but it just wasn't happening. So I took a plan, we made a plan. And as we know, all plans can fall apart. They don't always go as you plan,
Right.
as you see it moving forward, which it did not. Um, and it was the first, I would say if it wasn't for me deciding to go to graduate school, um, I probably wouldn't have stayed on track. And going to graduate school was actually a godsend with that. But as well as the thing is, I was also finding a job immediately was not what wasn't there. It was I applied, a little bit after while before I left, when I knew I was going to get medically retired, and then and after, and there were no hirings coming. And then that's also when I found a guy that I had served with. He was a former executive director of Project RELO, said, "Hey, come on this mission." And that's when I found Project RELO and met all these guys they're running the same issues I am. And so I felt like it wasn't, I think this time around, with finding Project RELO and with the plan I had versus the first time, I was more prepared, but it was still really rough. There wasn't much from the service itself on leaving, transitioning. There's the 1 or 2 day class of, you're in the Army, it's the ACAP,
Yeah, yeah, the yellow ribbon or
the
whatever.
yellow ribbon, where the Marine Corps it's TAPS. It doesn't, it usually gives you classes on like resume writing and this and that, but it's not beneficial for this mod, that it was great when like, you're 22, 23 years old, but it's not beneficial when you're older and you're getting ready to retire, and you're transitioning that way. But finding Project Relo and in this sense, and having the understanding of that it's not really helpful what the service does for you after is kind of put me in a spot to where I need to actually dig in and stick to a path and do that.
Yeah, and that's great. And what you guys are doing is fantastic. So so first of all, thanks for sharing your personal story, how that
Mhm,
worked,
absolutely.
and that you actually, became basically a product of the
Absolutely.
project. So let's catch our audience up to speed. So tell us about the origin story of Project Reload now,
Mhm.
what those letters actually represent, and kind of how initially, step one through whatever the SOP of how you guys integrate veterans, because it's what you guys are doing is fantastic. That's why I wanted to reach out and do this interview.
Absolutely.
So walk our listeners through who aren't familiar with it at all. Just kind of give them the starting point.
Okay. So Project Relo was started by Christian Anschutz. He was in the Marine Corps for about 8 years, and had been in corporate America for a while, and he had seen that a need to that there are veterans out there who, there's classes, there's everything on how to write a resume and get hired. But where veterans were being hired is okay, let's say you were an infantryman And okay, but they were getting hired into security guard jobs, kind of very similar to their jobs. But what he saw the problem was is that the what veterans do on a day to day while they're serving in the military is not much different than what a middle management at a corporate at a Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 company does on a weekly or monthly basis. And that just because that veteran may not have an MBA or a particular experience or skill set doesn't mean they can't fit into middle management in a corporation or a higher level position into into corporate America or anywhere. And so with Project Relo, what Christian has done and what Project Relo has done over the years, since about 2014, 2015, has brought the corporations to the veteran and take the corporate hiring managers, HR personnel, corporate executives, and put them through the day in the life of a military member in about a 4 day, 5 day mission. And that is the Relo Sentinel mission. Okay. And so they understand what the veterans do. Now I'm going to backtrack here a little bit. And so Project Relo itself it's a project, and Relo is a slang term for family. Okay, so you're bringing these veterans who when you have that sense of camaraderie, sense of family, let's bring them back together. Okay, we're bringing them back together, and now we're bringing these corporate execs into the family to show that these veterans have not only are they doing project management or personnel management, or they're managing millions of dollars of equipment, they're making decisions that on a corporate and some corporations may take months for multiple people to decide. They're making a decision in that depend lives are dependent upon in minutes, seconds, hours. The planning that goes into a military operation, that a battalion at any level, company, battalion, or brigade level entity plans for a few months. Corporations are doing in a year, or so what they're actually doing is they're doing that faster thinking. The veterans are bringing leadership qualities and their time management and their conflict resolution abilities and all this stuff that you find in corporate America to the court from the military into the corporate office, and they're improving those corporations.
Yeah,
So
that's great. Yeah, and I've mentioned this a few times on the show before. Like, it baffles me. I've been self-employed or a soldier since I was a
mhm,
teenager, but I did spend about a decade or so in a corporate, big corporation, and I didn't fit well.
yeah,
I did fine, or
mhm,
more than status quo, but it was just a disconnect. And it's because I was in an industry that didn't really have a lot of veterans, and there's just a
mhm,
disconnect with how you run that. So what I often try to remind my friends in business or who are just in management of a company,
mhm.
you're missing statistically one of the greatest human assets you could possibly find
Absolutely.
if you don't have an actual intentional recruiting effort towards military. You said it yourself. These kids, 19, 20, 22 years old, they are basically like senior leaders on the battlefield.
Mhm,
And here's the fun detail I like to remind people of. You can list all the things you just mentioned that they're responsible for, and then say, and oh, by the way,
mhm.
their employees, if you want to call it, their subordinates, are
Right.
heavily armed,
Mhm,
physically tough.
mhm.
You can't fire them and they can't quit. So
Exactly.
when you talk about conflict resolution and how to lead with them in a manner and carry yourself with character and honor,
Mhm.
that doesn't turn into what corporate folks would say is an HR nightmare. How do you deal with a subordinate or a superior that's a problem in the
Exactly.
team? We have just from the very basics of serving Uncle Sam, we have better discipline, better conflict resolution, all the stuff HR folks love to teach people about. So it's like
Exactly.
you have that right there. It was
Exactly.
provided
Yeah,
for you
it's
from
a
U.S. taxpayer dollar. They have every skill that you want in an
exactly.
organization.
Yeah, and you know it's the and a lot of times is the and that's where Project Relo and for me Project Relo has almost filled that disconnect to where corporate America over the years, you know, no matter how far back, has seen the military as war fighters. You know, they haven't it hasn't the as we call in the military the soft skills, you know, that project management, that conflict resolution, all those HR things,
Mhm.
you know, they corporate America doesn't really get to see the ins and outs of that on a daily basis. They see the big picture, what's on TV, what's in the news, or what they're told, you know, to understand. And that becomes a perception, you know, so perception becomes their reality. And so, but Project Relo has done a really great job of, you know, and I'm a result of Project Relo mission. And I'll get into that in a second. But it has, and all the missions that I've been on, it's, you know, there's these corporate leaders are like, at the end of this mission, are like, holy cow, you know, we have just expanded our hiring base tenfold.
Yep.
Okay. And they're not, and this is where, so like my mission was in the earlier days of Project Relo. And I'm in the field of emergency management. But I had the motivation then to start my own firm, emergency management consulting firm. And I got talking to different people from different corporate levels. And it, you know, understanding, getting their understanding gave me the drive to be like, okay, I can do this. You know, and that's what I got from a Project Relo mission was talking to the different levels of a corporate America and, you know, understanding that everything I know that I learned in the military is what is going, as long as I utilize them to the fullest, you know, give that 110%, it's going to be successful. And so our current executive director, Doug, you know, Doug Bryant, he was also a result of that same mission.
Hmm.
He's been hired off of because of a mission. We've had multiple people who got hired, who've had offers of position and salaries before a mission is even over. And there is and we have um, you know, we have very high percentage, 80 to 95% higher rate of these veteran instructors that we
Wow.
send on the missions.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's
Congratulations. That's a great stat.
it is, and it's, you know, and it's something that we endure. So you know, and that's something we strive for. It's a you know, it is a thing that we must have, you know. And so what we do is the veterans who are either early transitioning or in process of transitioning, what we do is we will bring them on a mission as instructors, and they will work with the corporations that we have on the mission, which at Project Relo we call it. These are Sentinel missions, and that's our corporate side. And these veteran instructors take these people out along with us Project Relo staff, and these corporate execs are not left to themselves, but like we'll get to our bivouac area and it's up to them to set up their own tent areas to help others, and we just see what they do. And then and then using Yamaha side by sides, we have convoys, we go to different areas, we put corporate execs through military operations or urban terrain, you know, close quarters combat stuff, all kinds of that. But every evening we do a fireside chat to where it is you know, what did you learn today about veterans? What did you learn about yourself? And every single one of these I've been on, there's an aha moment where the corporate execs, hiring managers are like, holy cow,
Yeah.
you know, what some of these guys, what the decisions that they had to make, like during a military operations urban terrain mission scenario, stuff is what some of the things would take a week or two in a corporate environment. Decisions, and these decisions got to be made split second, so they've their eyes have been opened, and so it's been a COVID kind of slowed down Project Relo, but we are slowly gradually coming back, and we are, we hold various events, we attend various events, and we're looking forward to the future.
Yeah, well, I think that's great. And our listeners, of course, are big supporters of the military and the veteran community. That's why our shows and in syndication for that reason. We have a lot of folks that just enjoy showing support. Our sponsors, of course, and I know our sponsors listen to the show as well. So I don't want to overlook the actionable things from this. So
Absolutely.
if you could, I'm going to kind of push you a little bit to
Mhm.
be a little bit greedy for a minute. Imagine that the folks listening to the show right now are the exact candidate you want for
Mhm.
both sides of the house. There's transitioning military, there's veterans, maybe family that know some that are deployed right now, but then also think of the corporate folks that you want to engage. So put yourself in the shoes of either of those listeners and walk us through what steps they should take to kind of proceed and learn more about your program and how to
Mhm.
actually participate.
All right, so first and foremost, I would say we have our website. It's projectrelo.org. And any veteran who is interested in being a veteran instructor or even becoming involved with Project Relo, we have a form that veterans can fill out on our on our website, or they can email me directly at rich@projectrelo.org. And they can email any of us directly. Doug, our executive director, is Doug@projectrelo.org. And then we can also, we also will be have social media. We have Facebook, we have Instagram. If corporations would like to get in touch with us for either for a mission or sponsoring an event, etc., we would they can email me at rich@projectrelo.org. And then we also accept donations. We accept donations through our website. We have a um, so it's we accept donations through our website. We also have fundraisers that we conduct at various events, which will be posted through our social media. And then if a corporation would definitely like to do a mission, they can email me. Again, I'll say it again at rich@projectrelo.org, and we can send them information. On average, a mission, I'll put it right out there. Mission cost is about $50,000, give or take, depending on the size of the mission, given on the number of people, etc. So it's and we do those costs cover the charges that Camp Grayling charges for land use, the campsite, the food, everything for that particular mission. And then we also utilize donations that for for operating expenses, etc.
And then what are the responsibilities of the veteran that wants to get involved? Is there
Um,
expenses to them?
the expenses to the veteran is for them is the airfare from wherever they are to the Project Reload headquarters in Grayling, Michigan. That is the only expense to them. Once they get there, that is everything else is covered by Project Reload.
Okay.
And we can and it's we're all at these events, we're always looking for veterans to support our mission, to come and join us, to accept we'll accept them into the family, no matter what branch of service. Um and and it's always growing, and we even have a few folks that we've accepted into the family who have given a lot to Project Relo, who are not military veterans. um but they're that supportive, and we've accepted them into the fold as well.
Mhm. Yeah, that's great. I think another part is the families of veterans. It's really tough on active duty
Hmm.
because, as you know, you can be, especially depending on your MLS, but you can be moving every 3 years or 4 years.
Absolutely.
If you're advancing your career, you're moving
Hmm.
and you're deployed, which means your spouse, if they're not military, also they're looking for a new career every 3 to 4 years. That's really
Absolutely right.
So there's a lot that needs to be kind of employers need to understand
Mhm.
that, and there's a value to that type of spouse as an employee, especially this world that we're in now, post 2020, where you can have people be remote workers.
Absolutely.
These Fortune 500 companies should think about how versatile and resilient these spouses are,
Absolutely.
and look at that as an extra asset too to pull into the ranks.
Absolutely. And on that note, we actually, if there's any corporation that would like to understand, veterans and veteran families, and how, veteran families and to set up a veteran hiring program or a veteran family hiring program, we can also come in. We can also help those corporations through speaking engagements that can help those corporations understand that kind of life and as well. We've been open. We've done things to where we've gone and spoken to corporations about veterans and veteran families, and especially with the spouses, that they may be leaving in 3 years, but they still have a lot to bring to the table.
Yeah, 100%. Household six, as we used to call the
Absolutely, yes.
spouses. They know how to run a house with their own.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, this is fantastic stuff. I do want to ask you, since you did spend time in two, we'll
Mhm.
call it three branches, two theater of operations, then you became inducted into this project. Now you're a leader in this project. I want to hit on leadership for you personally. Is there one particular lesson or a particular leader, maybe by name or
Mhm.
what have you, that you know for a fact, um, whether it was a good or bad lesson, something that you think you only could have possibly learned from your time in the service that's helped you today? What do you think is like a one leadership skill lesson, or perhaps someone that mentored you in a way that no other scenario in your life would have played out that you would have learned that?
So over my years, it's a great question. So over the years in the Marine Corps, in the National Guard, in full-time Army, um, there was, I've had numerous mentors, so I couldn't mention one by name, but all the really great leaders I've had, and a lot of the bad leaders that I've learned. The one point that I have learned that really sticks out is at the top of my list is you have to listen to your subordinates, and you have to listen to those people above you. Actually listen, not just hear them, but actually listen to what they're saying. Because if you don't listen to what your subordinates are saying, those that you're responsible for, you may miss out on their details of their understanding of what you're doing, or what they may have personally going on that may affect what you're trying to do. And then from the other level, from the other side, there's those above you. Listen to them to make sure you're clear on their intent, that you're not on the commander's intent, as they call it in the military, but also as how are they presenting it, and what manner are they presenting it in? Are they presenting it in like, oh, we got to do this again? Are they presenting it to where they're excited about it? You actually listen to them and understand their perspective and how it's being presented, because that could impact everything later on down the road. And I've learned that as at the top of my list over the years, and that is something that we as a society, and in my experience and what I've seen is actually listening is, I wouldn't say it's not an issue, but it is a something that you have to develop and learn to do. It's not something that comes naturally. Like you can listen to somebody, like you listen to music, it's hearing it, but like actually listening and listening for is somebody sounding down? Are they sounding upbeat about something, excited about something? Actually listen to that kind of stuff, the down and dirty of it, and you'll be able to, if you listen, you'll understand a lot more.
Yeah, agrees. Like the old NCO from the Army used to say, "Kukumu," right? Clear understanding, concise understanding, mutual understanding.
Correct.
Yeah,
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 absolutely.
fantastic. Well, I got two more questions for you, and
Okay.
I hope at least one of them's a fun one. Um, I always like to ask, and you above most of my guests, you have lived multiple uh, adventures.
Multiple lives.
Yeah,
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 that's a
yeah,
good
yeah,
put it.
yeah.
Yeah.
So now that you've lived through these chapters, and you got a lot ahead of you, of course, you're a young guy, but I like to take a minute and reflect. Like you walked me through that you joined, your father joined, every generation had someone in the service. If you had a minute where you could time travel, and the only thing you could do with that minute is talk to your younger self before your first enlistment,
Hmm.
and you can't change anything, you can
Right.
only give yourself some type of commentary
Hmm.
about what you learned, what you've been through. What would it be? Warning, guidance? What would you say if you had a minute or less with your younger self?
With my younger self, I would definitely be like, um, good or bad, pay more attention and actually, you know, care, like care more about what you're doing, care more about the day to day. Meaning that, when I was younger, I know when I was in the Marine Corps, my first lesson, I took every day for granted. I was stationed in Hawaii. Went nothing to the beach all day, and I looked at it as the that yes, I was in the Marine Corps, I was a Marine, I'm fulfilling what my family's done for centuries, and my grandfather walked across that parade deck, I walked across that parade deck, but it wasn't until a few years ago, about 5 years ago, that I realized that you know that in that moment is there was a I took so much for granted that I should have cared more in that moment about each day. And it was about like, I didn't find out until about 5 or 6 years ago that the unit I was in the Marine Corps, HMH 363, my grandfather was actually a plank owner,
Oh,
as they
wow.
call it in the naval services.
Wow.
So it's
That's
one of
wild.
those things to where, like, with my younger self, even before my enlistment, I would have told myself, day to day matters. Every little thing matters. Do not take it for granted, and pay attention and care
Yeah.
about every little thing you do. And so that's what I would go back and tell myself. And it's because there's moments like that you think back, and like, you're out having fun with friends, but later on now, those friends may be gone. Those friends may be, things may have happened. You lose sight, and it's one of those things, we we don't do. And one thing I do regret now from back then, and that's why I tell myself to care before my enlistment, would be there are people that I wish I knew how to get a hold of now from back then. And so there's stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well said. Yeah. I'll tell you, it goes by so fast.
It does go by really fast. It does.
All right. Well, last question, and I don't
Okay.
typically ask folks this outside of the month of December, but I gotta know. I gotta know. You were introduced, you and Doug, the whole team. First of all, I love everything you guys are doing. The whole team effort is really impressive to me. But we were introduced through Army Colonel Rob Robinson. Big shout out. We call him the Angry Colonel with love and
Right.
affection, and he's a big part of football. As for football, the whole team over there. I have to know. You served
The
under
Army or
the
Navy
Marine
game,
Corps
right?
and you served under the Army. I got to know who you're rooting for.
So honestly, I don't root for either one.
Ah,
I am not a football fan. I will put
all
it
right. This
right now.
interview is over. I'm just
I
kidding.
know,
Just
right? Right? No, so to me it's and I wouldn't honestly, with football, football's one of those, I like it, but I'm not a diehard football fan. And I would, with the Army Navy game, I think what I like about it is the tradition.
absolutely.
Is the tradition. And it doesn't matter which side you're on or which side. I think rooting for each side is great. But at the end of the day, you could have those rivalries. And I always think back to the exchange of those cadets.
Yep.
Exchange of cadets. That is what matters. Is that camaraderie later on. And you could give everybody so much crap during the game. And that's what I like watching.
Yeah.
That's
Oh,
why I like
absolutely.
watching out the
100%. The ceremonial,
is
the traditions before,
and
during,
after.
and
Yeah.
afterwards, incredible.
Yep.
That is the most important game for me all year. And I live
And
in upstate New York. We have the Bills, we have all
absolutely.
the sports. That game to me has so much class, so much leadership, so many things that anyone should take lessons from. And it's I don't know, it's a great
And it,
spirit of service. I really enjoy watching.
absolutely. And being in, being in active duty Marine Corps, being in the Army National Guard, active Army, it's we give everybody so much, we give each other crap, we give each other the nudges, we do this and do that. But at the end of the day, you need each other to actually do what we do. And it's like so with the but the I think the Army Navy game is the biggest showcase of the what we got to do together to do what we do.
Yeah,
And
100%,
it's
100%.
tradition.
It's like siblings, each branch
It's
is a sibling.
exactly like siblings.
And they can bicker, but try getting in the
Correct.
middle of that and going after one of them. You're you're gonna regret that decision.
Exactly. Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. So
So
that's what, that's how I am with that. It's one of those like I love going, I love watching it. It's hard and it'd be hard to root for either one,
yeah,
honestly.
yeah.
Yeah,
All right, I'll
it's
let you pass on that one.
yeah.
You have a unique situation. I'll let it slide.
But it's a no, but it's a good question. It is a good question. I mean, that brings me back to a good memory of when I was on active duty in the Army. One of my promotion board to E5 to sergeant, my our command sergeant major made me sing the Marine Corps hymn. And he's like, "Do you still know it?" And I was like, "Of course I still know it." And then he had me sing the Army song, which I still knew, which I knew. And so it was like, but it was funny to me to where, okay, he goes, he was playing with me, give me a little jab like that. And so it was like, but in the long afterwards, he goes, that's what we like. We like that because you still have those traditions and you brought them with you. So that, it's encompassing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a wonderful thing. It's hard for folks outside to understand, but this is one of the reasons this show I think is so successful and why we get so much positive feedback is even folks with no connection to the military, they
Mhm.
start to see the consistent pattern from all of our guests week after week. We've been doing this for 3+ years now, 100 some odd guests,
Mhm.
and we all have different MOSs. We all have different origin stories, but once you're in,
That's it. Yeah,
we are united in a way that all of humanity could
Mhm.
take lessons from. I mean,
Absolutely.
it's great that
Absolutely.
you're educating corporate America, but the whole world, the world leadership could take a few notes from
Oh,
18
absolutely.
and 19
Absolutely.
year olds in this military.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And that's
So
not just, and on that note, that's not just the US military. That's any military.
agreed,
That's
agreed.
I was, when I've served with tons of different nations military, and
Yeah.
it's not a note that can be taken from any of them.
Yeah, in my time in the sandbox, as we said, oh 04, oh 05, we had Aussies, we had all sorts of the Canadian, we had all sorts of folks
Yep,
there, and it was stunning to me, and the
absolutely.
similarities, especially in the volunteer forces, of course, the similarities are just
Absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. Well, this has been a fun time. I
Absolutely.
can't thank you enough. So, folks, you've been enjoying this, and I know you're going to follow up and go onto our website. You're going to find a link to Project Relo. You're going to find some more details that were covered today. You're going to find Richard's biography, and of course, on the page you can see all the leadership, all the team members that is doing this great work. And big shout out to Rob Robinson out there, the Angry Colonel, for setting up this interview. But folks, we've been listening and speaking with Richard Mortimer, veteran both of the Marine Corps, Army National Guard, and of course, Army full time. And he's the director of corporate development for Project RELO. I encourage you highly to check out the good work they're doing. If you are a veteran in transition, you know a veteran coming up on transition or retirement, planned or unplanned. If you're in a position with a company or an organization that's hiring or looking to staff or looking to understand this incredible talent just sitting there waiting for you to reach out to. Definitely reach out to Project Leo Relo and the great team out there. So, Richard, thanks again. I really appreciate it. Obviously, thank you for your service a couple times over, and we'll get along fine, except 3 hours in
Yeah, in
December. I'm
December.
rooting Army. I'm sorry, I'm
Yeah.
all in on the Army, but
Well, thank you, Rob. Thank you for your service as well, and thank you for having us on your podcast and on your show. And you're welcome anytime to any real event, and maybe we'll try to get you out on a mission or two at some
oh,
point.
I'd love that. Yeah, I'll reach out to you. I have a couple of folks we'll talk offline that I think would be great candidates for
Excellent,
corporate support for you.
excellent.
So folks, stay tuned. We'll have a short break. Rich, thanks again for all your
Thank you,
continued service to our veteran community.
thank you.
All right, folks, stand by.